Right, back with another video. Today, what I want to talk to you about is my top 5 reasons of why going with the cheapest quote might not always be the cheapest quote when it comes to doing the work, and why you might end up paying more than the most expensive quote you had at the start by the time you get to the end of your build project. I'm Josh, one of the directors at Inspired Worx. We are based just outside of Bristol and we cover Somerset, Bristol and Bath. We specialise in high-end refurbishments, new builds, renovations and all aspects of construction. I'm making it my mission to put content out there that helps educate homeowners about all of the possible issues when looking to do a building project. Being from the trade myself and now being a director of a construction company, I oversee everything from quoting projects to delivering projects to handing projects over and everything in between. So I've got a pretty good understanding of what good looks like and also what good doesn't look like. I want to give you the tools and information to make better decisions so your project goes smoother and hopefully it costs you less money. Right, this brings me on to my reason number 1 why going with the cheapest quote at the start might cost you more in the long run. And my reason number 1 is lack of detail. When you're looking for quotes, the chances are you're going to get 2 or 3 quotes and each one's going to be presented differently. The good ones will have a breakdown of works, they'll have a list of specified items, they'll be really clear and easy to read. The bad ones, however, will probably be a few bullet points and then a lump sum figure at the bottom. These are the dangerous ones, and the reason you need to look out for these is because it leaves room for uncertainty and grey areas between what you expect and what's actually included in the quote. Let me give you an example. If in your build you need 3 new doors supplied and fitted, one builder might specify a really nice door for 150 quid. The other builder might specify a not so nice door for 50 quid. If in the description of works, it doesn't specify what door they've allowed for and you go with the one that's a lump sum, when it comes to actually fitting those doors and you decide to choose a nicer door, and the builder turns around and says, we've not allowed for that, you don't actually know if they're telling the truth or not. And this is what I mean by there being grey areas when you start the job. You want to minimise grey areas. They're bad, they're expensive, and they're only going to cost you money in the long run. So my advice for point number 1 is to ask for a breakdown. Ask for a list of all of the different items included within the job. And then secondly, ask for a breakdown of specification and ask the builder to tell you exactly what items they've included and what the product details are. So you can go through the quote and understand exactly what you're going to get for your money. Right, this brings me on to my reason number 2 of why going with the cheapest quote to start with might cost you more in the long run. My reason number 2 is unrealistic provisional sums. So I'll explain what a provisional sum is for people that don't know. Basically, what provisional sum is when you're quoting a job, there'll be some elements in that project that you don't fully know all the details for. For example, kitchen. You don't know the finish, you don't know what worktops they're having, you don't know what appliances they're having. Bathroom sanitary ware. You might not know what bath, what shower, what taps you're going to have. Floor finishes. You might not know you want laminate, tiles, etc, etc. You get my gist. A provisional sum will get put in the quote to cover one or all of the items that I just mentioned. So you've got a starting point within the quote. In my experience, the problems come here when these provisional sums are unrealistically low. So, for example, if in your quote there's a provisional sum for a new kitchen and that is 3 grand, you're going to have to ask some questions considering that the UK average for a kitchen is around 16 grand. If you go ahead with that builder thinking that the bottom line of the quote's all good, and then when it comes to designing the kitchen, they turn around and say, well, actually, your new kitchen's 13 grand, you got a 10 grand shock. you need to be careful on provisional sums, and you need to check that what's gone in there is realistic. My advice for this would be to think about the finish and the level of product that you want in your build at the start. So have a think about it, do some mood boards, do some research online, and then work out how much these materials are going to be. If, for example, you're going to tile your floors and you know you want a specific tile that's 50 quid a square metre and you need 10 square metres, when you get the quote come in and there's a provisional sum for £20 a square metre for 10 square metres, you can flag it and you'll know that that provisional sum won't cover the level of finish that you want. And you can apply this to a fair few items within a quote. So that is my advice, is research the level of finish you want, research the products that you think you're going to like, and then cross-check them against the quote. Reason number 3, why going with the cheapest quote at the start might not always be the cheapest quote come the end. Reason number 3 is missing items. So this ties into what I said at the start, and really what you need to think of is when you're sending your project out to multiple builders, how much information are you giving them? Are you giving them a decent level of spec, a scope of works, a bill of quantities, and a good set of drawings? If the answer is yes, happy days. You are well on the way to getting some competitive quotes back from those builders. But if it's a no, there's a high chance that all of these quotes that come back may be missing some items. Now again, I know what you're thinking, that builders should know what needs to go within a quote. They should. However, on certain types of projects that are complicated, there is a lot of information and a lot of things to pick up on at the quoting stage. Think of it this way, if you're not giving 3 builders a list of works and the same set of drawings, how can you expect all 3 quotes to come back including the same things? So if you haven't given your builder this, and when you get 3 quotes back you've got one outlier that's 20 grand cheaper, you need to be careful and you need to do your due diligence to make sure everything's included. My advice on this one is provide a scope of works. Now, if your budget will allow it, I would suggest that you get your architect to do this. And even again, if your budget can allow it further, I would get the architect to do what's called a tender process. So they actually go out to contractors that they would recommend, and they will send out all the information to a set number of contractors. They will then review it, and then you can go through it with them and decide which of those contractors you like the best. Failing that, and if your budget won't allow you to do that, because that is not the cheapest way of doing things by any stretch, with your drawings, form your own scope of works, form your own list of specification for things that you want included, and give this to the builders when they come round to price. This way, at least you're going to minimise the amount of items that can get missed in a quote. My reason number 4 why going with the cheapest quote might not always be the cheapest quote come the end of the project. Mismanaged labour. Now, I've done another video on how to find the right size of builder for your project, which this does tie back into. If your project's a small side extension or porch build, realistically, you don't want a medium to large size company doing that work for you. You want a smaller, local, one-man band type of outfit. Equally, if your project's a lot larger, say it's a year-long refurbishment, extension, structural knock-throughs, and a pool house build, then you're probably going to want a bigger builder. You're probably not going to want a smaller one-man band. Each size of builder can resource the job correctly, and you need to make sure you pick the right one to suit your project. Here's the risks if you don't. Say you have gone with a very small builder for a very large project. I would imagine the issues that you're going to face is that builder's going to struggle to resource the job. They might have underpriced it. They might have miscalculated how much labour is needed. And the risks are at this point that trades get brought in, they get rushed through, they get underpaid, and it just breeds a that'll do attitude on the project because everyone wants to get it done and get out as quickly as possible. It's not what you want. My advice on this one would be to dig a little deeper into some of the costs. Ask the builder to break out some specific items. Then once you've got those items, ask the builder to let you know of those items, how much of that is labour and how much of that is materials. You should then be able to look at that, and for the labour element work out roughly how many man days that your builder is going to charge you to do that. And is that realistic? Does it feel realistic to how long that job will actually take? This is my advice on this point. And I think it's important to say that with that and with any of the points I'm making, of course, there's some amazing small one-man bands. There's some amazing larger companies. Not everyone should be tarred with the same brush, but I'm just speaking from my personal experience of stories I've heard, real life cases that I've witnessed. So yeah, just want to clarify, there is some really good builders out there, all different sizes. My reason number 5 of why the cheapest quote at the start may end up costing you more in the long run. And my reason number 5 is additional costs. Now, I think it's important to say that even with a really well broken down quote, because of the nature of most build projects, there is always a chance that things will come up that no one has planned for. When you start knocking down walls, opening up floor voids, taking down ceilings, these are all things that can't be seen before the job started. So if you take up a load of floorboards and the floor joists are rotten, no one knew about this, but there will be an additional cost. Now here's why some quotes appear cheaper at the start than other quotes. What a good builder will do is, on a project and within their quote, they should be able to explain to you all of the areas of risk in your project. Here's where the problems can come. Obviously, if you've gone with the more expensive quote, then you've got a worst case picture of what might happen and what the cost might be. If you've gone with the cheaper quote and you get into your basement and the builder starts ripping up floorboards, when you find all the rotten floor joists, now this builder has got you by the short and curlies. The chances are you're not going to go and find another builder at this stage, so they can near enough name their price for the works to put it right. And again, I'm not saying this always happens, but sadly, going in with a cheap quote at the start of the job, knowing there's going to be additional works throughout the job, is a tactic that some builders will use to win business. And reputable builders will lose business because they've been honest with their quote from the start and they've advised the customer of all of the possible unforeseens that might happen in the job. And I get it that if you are a homeowner and you're getting quotes back, it's very easy to get the quotes and it be a race to the bottom to see who's the cheapest and who's the most expensive. Your judgment can be clouded and you can be a little bit blinkered to it because at the end of the day, you've got a dream, you've got a project that you want to do. And when you see that someone's 10 grand cheaper, in your mind, that's a really good saving. And there is cases where it probably is, but there's also a lot of cases where, yeah, it might be 10 grand cheaper, but by the time you get into the job, additional costs come up, things start creeping in. That 10 grand could easily get eaten away. And then you'll probably be near enough back at the same cost as some of the most expensive quotes that you had in the first place. So my advice for point number 5 is speak to your builder about the different areas that might be risky in your project and ask them if they've made any allowances or contingencies within the quote. Now, to summarise and close this up, if you use my last example, which is floorboards in the basement, and you compound this with my other reasons of unrealistic provisional sums, missing items, lack of detail, mismanaged labour, if you combine all of these across the course of a job, you can build a picture of how a cheap quote at the start might not be so cheap at the end. In my opinion, it's really important that you understand all of these different variables that can be within a quote when you're looking to get works done. That is my 5 reasons why, in my opinion, that if you go with the cheapest quote in the start, it might not always be the cheapest quote at the end. Hopefully this advice is helpful. If you want to see more videos like this with different advice, please let us know in the comments of things that you'd like to be answered. I'd be more than happy to do it. And hopefully we'll see you on the next one.